Hello, what's up? This is EJK, and this video today is going to be between Maru versus Zest. And the main points of this video will be to go over and kind of highlight the early, mid, and late game goals that you want to have in TvP. The matchup all Terrans seem to be struggling with. Maru really shows us different kinds of ways to make units that we didn't think work in the matchup work. And by that I mean he doesn't do anything very special with his builds or anything. I mean, it's typical Maru aggression, and he doesn't do anything fancy with his unit comp. He doesn't build any unique units. They're just plain bio units with some liberators and medevacs. Yet he always seems to be able to find weak spots in the Protoss armor and ultimately tear off the Protoss defense one by one until nothing is left. So we're going to analyze a little bit about different kinds of guidelines that his build and just how he approaches the matchup and why they're important to know. In the early game, the most important thing is going to be scouting. In this game, Maru opens up for a Reactor Hellion opener. If not that, a Reaper opener is fairly good to open up with. But Reactor Hellions also do the job. They get a arguably, they can get a much better rate of return for the investment of 200 minerals. Being able to they're very fast, so they can scoot around the base and get a full scout before possibly dying. They can take many more shots than Reapers can against Adepts in a Mothership Core. So, two Hellions, TY really popularized this, and it really prevents the Protoss player from being kind of greedy, and it also prevents the excuse me, it makes it a lot more difficult for the Protoss player to be able to hide what they're doing in the early game. You get a lot of illumination into the Protoss's base and into their plans for the rest of the game with the two Hellions scout. Now, Zest so happens to be sending his Mothership Core across the field, and one of the downfalls of the build that Maru is doing is that he only has one Marine and he's only making a second one. You need 3 Marines to stop the Mothership Core, so this kind of already becomes a wacky early game because the two Hellions are on one side of the map. They don't really have a counter, and the Mothership Core is on the other side of the map, and it doesn't really have a counter either. And only after time, when additional production has kicked in, will the Mothership Core and the two Hellions be able to be cleaned up. Now, aside from the economic damage, I think the scouting information that both players obtained, Zest seeing the 2 Raxes and the factory, whereas Maru he just sees an Adept, and he sees the Twilight Council as well. Yeah, he sees that. And he also gets a decent amount of probe kills as well, although we see on the left-hand side that Zest still killed a lot of SCVs. He killed more than Maru, essentially. Stupid cough. So, the Hellions weren't able to get much economic damage. I would say a good benchmark, if you guys are curious, is 2 Hellions should be able to kill about on the high side, they should never kill more than 5 probes. If you can kill 5 probes with your 2 Hellions, you are in a fantastic spot. 3 probes, pretty even. Lose some mining time. Not the biggest deal in the world. Anything less than that is kind of meh, but you still get scouting information off with it. So that kind of entails the early game, where both players are looking for information. The Terran specifically is looking for what the Protoss is doing, and since Maru saw Twilight Council with something researching on the way, he starts to build Marauder production in case it's against Blink. And he also gets to skip the eBay. He doesn't need to build turrets right away either because of what he scouted Zest is doing. So now that as the mid-game approaches, the important things to take into consideration when approaching the mid-game is what kind of timing as a Terran player, or a Protoss player really, but we'll focus on the Terran perspective in this video. So as a Terran player, what kind of timing can you do in the mid-game? In this case, Maru does a Widowmine drop, double Liberator, harass / stim timing. We'll see in a little bit. And that's his mid-game timing. It's what is going to keep Zest in his base. It's going to be what keeps Zest defensive, and it's what allows Maru to safely take a third base. So even though that Zest has a third base up and mining already, that might seem intimidating, but Zest does not have his forges yet. Maru's +1 attack is going to be done before Zest's upgrades are done. And Zest is now just powering up his gateways, so he's only going to have enough units to really poke and to defend. He will not have additional gateways and resources and gateway production to be able to warp in any kinds of early harassment with Warp Prisms and Adepts. What this mid-game timing does for Maru is, like I said earlier, it essentially allows him to take a third base safely. It's very easy for a Protoss player to take their third base, and it's very difficult for Terran to take a third base as well. A fast third base, I should say, and to be able to defend it properly, because Protoss has a lot of different kinds of all-ins, to the point where I don't think 3cc is a very viable build. Maybe in like a best of 7 you can use it in like one game and catch your opponent off guard, but for the most part I don't think 3cc is a very good build, because it doesn't have enough defensive capability to defend against all the different all-ins that Protoss players can do, and it also offers no way to punish a Protoss player who plays equally as greedy. So I just want to quickly go over what's kind of happened in this game. There's a lot of action that kind of went on, and both players are now at about the 3 base stage. But really the only goals that both players had was scout in the early game, see what your opponent's opening with, do a timing attack. In this case, Zest did a blink timing attack with the Warp Prism. Maru had defense ready. Zest backed up. Maru did a Widowmine drop, and he did a double Liberator harassment. That did nothing. He was able to see that Zest has good observer coverage, and Zest's composition is primarily Blink Stalkers and Adepts. So I would consider this game fairly even for the most part. Now, the last part of this video is going to be all about the late game and what you want to be accomplishing with the Terran or Protoss army, really. And in the late game, mobility, knowing when to... Well, okay, so mobility in your army, how mobile is your army? If you have like something like siege tanks or battle cruisers in your army is not very mobile. Or Immortals, Colossus, Disruptors, your army is not very mobile. And you also have to know when you can go out on the map. So I just want to point out right now that both Maru and Zest, although Zest is a bit more, what's the word? He's a bit more adventurous in where he is putting his army and taking his 4th base, but essentially neither player is on the other side of their map. Maru's in a defensive position at his 3rd base, and Zest is in a defensive position at his 4th base. So both players know that if they're to move out and their army gets caught, they will pretty much die at this point. And I can see this happen. I see this happening very commonly when I'm doing coaching, where in the TvP matchup, the biggest problem I see students have is that they do not have a strong understanding of when to attack and when not to attack. In this case, they could have already tried to poke out with 2 medevacs, did some damage, got completely shut down, and now are behind for the rest of the game. Maru is very good at knowing when to attack and knowing when he can move out parts of his army. So right now he's moving out 4 medevacs. This is a very calculated move. It's not something that you think, well, this looks good to move 4 medevacs here. Let me try that. This was something that Maru's done many times. He's rehearsed it many times. And essentially his late game goal is to target the 4th base of Zest. And Maru really has an ingenious way of moving and kind of pinning Zest's army to different parts of the map. So even though Zest knows that there's a big medevac fleet full of bio units next to Zest's 4th base, he still ends up losing the 4th base. Someone like Zest, knowing where Maru's army is and still losing the 4th base, is something that I can't really even highlight the significance of in just the decision making that Maru has. So right now the other part of his army is moving up, and the other part of his army only has liberators. It doesn't have any medevacs in it as well, so he's not really looking to do any drops. He's simply, that army is simply there to bait Zest's army to step away from the 4th base long enough for Maru to snipe it off. So Maru scans, he sees, oh, this is a good spot to siege up. I'm going to siege up here. He sieges up here, and there's really no reason for him to be sieging up here. He's not really next to any base. He's not threatening anything. He's not doing any economic damage. He's just simply taking a neutral spot on the map. And he's just like, hey, I'm going to hang out here for a little bit. And Zest obviously does not want Maru this close to his base, so he uses his full army to hop on half of Maru's army to stomp it, but then Maru just retreats, and the other half of Maru's army is ready to kill the 4th base. So what ends up happening is Zest's army is able to crush that half of Maru's army because Zest has his entire army fighting, whereas Maru had 4 medevacs, or a very sizable amount of bio at the 4th base ready to snipe it. So Maru immediately backs up. He got the 4th base. That's all he wanted. He doesn't want to fight anymore. And the good thing about also having the medevacs still alive with their units is that it forces Zest to warp in additional units at his 4th base rather than in the counterattack that he's trying to do right now. If Zest had his entire army, he probably would have been able to do a lot more damage, probably break in to Maru's base because there are only a couple of liberators, but the medevacs are forcing a very large army, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 stalkers, about 8 adepts sitting back that are not part of this fight in Zest's main army. So, as the game progresses on, Maru decides to lift up his 4th base, and this again is a very calculated move. The reasoning behind this is there's a certain time, I wish we had the in-game clock, but there's a certain time in the game where the main and the natural start to mine out, but not the 3rd, and Maru took his 3rd base a lot slower than Zest as well, so the mining of the 3rd base is going to be healthy for a little bit longer. But around the time that the main base runs out is around the time that Maru is looking to take his 4th base. So he's looking to take his 4th base about now. He doesn't need additional economy because he's essentially maxed out at 185 supply. He has a good army. And so it makes a lot of sense that when he's on 3 bases and when the main mine's out and you have your army already built up, you're not really looking to split the map. You're just looking to have enough of an economy to keep the game going and to be able to keep producing units, rather than trying to accumulate a bank and add on more production and try to tech into something else. So Maru's lifting off his 4th base right now, and this is around the time, you can purposefully decide to lift up your 4th base or to start your 4th base a little bit earlier and have it down that means you're playing a lot more defensively because you have money invested into the command center, and you have to have extra workers as well, depending on how fast the fourth base comes out. But here, Maru makes a kind of an almost seamless transition, very low downtime. Unfortunately, though, if he loses any of his economy, it's going to hurt a lot more, especially if he loses an orbital, because that he's still only on 3 orbitals. So it's a temporary boost in income to kind of even things out. And again, Maru's just rinsing and repeating. He sent a drop here, and the drop's going to go here, and he's going to push with his main army this way. And that's essentially the theme of the game. He's not doing anything very fancy. He's decided that he's going to target Zest's 4th base, and the way he's going to do that is splitting his army up into 2 groups and essentially catch Zest out of position. It's hard for Zest to really attack into a 5 Liberator army. So when the Liberators are sieged up, the Protoss player is either forced to take a cost-inefficient trade or to back up when something like this happens. Or Zest simply has to run back and give up any chance of attacking. So it's essentially a win-win for Maru, no matter what decision Zest makes. A little bit of sloppy multitasking going on. It's kind of hard to control stimmed units on 2 different battlefields. So Maru lost a little bit more than he should have there, but he still traded out enough of Zest's army, and he got the Nexus as well. So Zest is still only on 1 base, whereas Maru is on 2 bases right now. Yeah, around closer to 1 base, I guess. The 3rd is about to be mined out at this point in the game. Now, Zest is able to counterattack because Maru did take a slightly worse engagement. He's going to try anyways, but really, Zest shouldn't be out on the map right now because he doesn't have a superior army. Maru has 20 more army supply, and he doesn't really have a tech advantage of any kind. The Tempests don't really work well against Bio, and he doesn't have a bank or anything to replenish his army. And Maru is able to catch him out of position here and just simply punish Zest for being out of position. There was no reason for Zest to attack. He got impatient. He thought that he could end the game somehow. I think he was going to try to camp up this position over here with Tempests, but Maru simply attacked Zest before Zest got that opportunity to siege up. And GG. Poor Zest. So, yeah. TvP matchup. Maru makes it look very easy. And he just has very strong fundamentals that really anyone can copy. It's not really a matter of he doesn't really have any flashy things. Like his game plan is very simple: to split up his army into 2 groups and target the 4th base. And he just simply since he's a pro gamer, he's able to practice a lot more than normal people. So the result of his good performances is essentially a result of good practice. So hopefully this will help you guys on the TvP ladder. We've been seeing a trend lately away from Liberator range and going into more mobile-based army compositions to prevent the Protoss player from making an effective Tempest transition and being able to hide behind a lot of Templars. Hopefully there'll be some more TVPs so we can see the style more. I can't wait for this week. There's going to be a lot of Pro League. I'll probably try to make another video or 2 in the upcoming week. I'm going to try to be better at making videos and putting out video content. So just let me know if you have a specific video or topic you want me to do, and I will get on it ASAP. Peace out.